Jamey from Stonemeyer Games, and I hope you're doing well. It's the last Wednesday in June, and so next week we'll be doing our e-newsletter, our monthly e-newsletter. So next week will be a little bigger than today, but I do have plenty of stuff going on today. Some just kind of fun stuff, some personal stuff, and also some business stuff related to Stonemeyer Games. And I actually forgot to put on my list, I wanted to mention that I am now in the midst of posting multiple design diaries about expeditions. So if you're curious to see, even if you're not curious about expeditions, but you'd like to see what the prototype process looks like for a game from start to finish, the design process for expeditions took quite a while. And so I have lots of little stories and changes and photos to share. They are now on, or two of those posts are on the design diary subpage of expeditions on our website. I have one more to write. I don't know exactly one. I probably have more to write than that, but I have one more to write about that prototyping process to cover 2022, and I'll get to it sometime. It's kind of a busy week, so maybe not today, but in the near future, I'll get to that. And in related news, in fact, let me hold off on that related news till a few more people are here because it's kind of big news regarding shipping. Good news, but big news. So I see a lot of people: Carol, Jonathan, Ray, Steve, Ian, Julie, Tony, joining me right off the bat here. Thank you. I thank you all for popping in to say hi. It's always good to see your names and faces. And whether you're old or new, especially if anyone is joining us for the first time, feel free to chime in the comments and say hi. I love seeing new faces here, as well as people who join every week or on an ongoing basis. Hey, Frank is here from the City of Games. Always good to hear from Frank, a great peer in the industry. I actually mentioned Frank the other day. I had a great chat with Ricardo at Rubber Chicken Games. It's a podcast that's normally in Portuguese, but Ricardo is also bilingual, and he hosted an episode with me in English last week, which I think is live now on rubberchickengames.com, I believe. We had a great chat, and I thought of Frank specifically during that chat because Frank is a tabletop game publisher and designer, but Frank also loves digital games and knows digital games really well. You can often see in Frank's blog post that he ties in a lesson learned or something that he's thinking about in the digital game world, the video game world, into what he's thinking about and processing for the tabletop game world. And Ricardo happens to be entrenched in both of those industries as well. So I'm thinking of Frank here because he popped up here in the chat today, but I would recommend that podcast, and I hope to see an episode with Frank there in the future as well, because I love hearing Frank's thoughts that cross over between those two worlds. Carlos is here today with no questions for once. Carlos, good to have you just here for fun. Dwayne, Sam said he really appreciated the video I did with Alex on the Great Logistics Challenge. Yeah, this was my Monday post this week. I filmed it on Friday with Alex, and then my blog post on Monday was about the great puzzle of logistics and retail and sales and distribution, and all things handled by the amazing Alex, our Chief Operating Officer. Alex, yeah, we talked about all these different puzzly elements of demand forecasting and the constant puzzle that is. It's always a guess to which products do we decide to sell to retail or not. And mostly the answer is yes, we will sell these products to retail and distribution, but every once in a while we have a product that doesn't make sense for it in terms of the margins or the size of it. And so it's a question that we ask all the time. Anyway, it's a great conversation. I won't recap it here, or I won't redo it here because it's better had with Alex on the video for this past week. You can see that on our YouTube channel. Let's see, Nick, Trevor, Greg, Carol, good to see you. Carol says, any fun July 4th plans? It's a normal work day for me, honestly. So I don't know if any other entrepreneurs here who run your own business, one of the joys I have is on federal holidays, they are slow days for emails. So I don't actually get a lot of emails like customer service stuff. I don't have a lot of stuff to do because it's holiday for a lot of people, at least in the US, July 4th is a holiday. And so I can get a lot more creative work done on those days, or just a lot of catch-up work done that I need to do. And so I love working on holidays. It's one of my favorite days to work because it's I can focus a little bit more. I don't have to worry about my inbox quite as much on those days. So July 4th, I'm looking forward to a great productive work day that day. I don't have any other plans. Amy says she just learned how to play viticulture and have played every day on vacation. That's awesome, Amy. I'm glad you're spending your vacation playing viticulture. Are you in a thematic place for playing viticulture, like a vineyard or even better, Italy, or just in a fun vacation spot? She says she's really enjoying it. Thank you, Jamey. That means a lot to me. Stephen is here today as well. Josh, Frank echoes this. He says, public holidays are my favorite days to work. Totally. I absolutely get that. Same here, Frank. Some news that actually just came out today is that Tabletopia has put Fantasies and Futures, Tapestry Fantasies and Futures on their platform now. They've been working on it for a little bit. It happened a little bit later than normal due to me not sending them the files on time, not them at all. And so now if you want to play Tapestry Fantasies and Futures, it is on Tabletopia as of today. You can go over there right now and check that out. And now that I'm a few minutes into this, only 5 minutes, but I wanted to share the good news. I have some news from Joe about shipping, and I want to get this exactly right. So I'm going to look at my other monitor and let you know what the shipping update is for Joe. So 2 shipping updates about the nesting boxes and expeditions. For the nesting boxes, the Wingspan nesting boxes, Australia, Europe, and Canada are completely caught up. The US is waiting on 1 lingering container. So there's 1 container. It's scheduled to arrive first sometime this week. All champion orders have shipped, and the remainder should ship by the end of this week. But, well, I'm reading this too literally, but Joe says maybe say the end of next week publicly. Okay, so it might be until, just in case, because there's a lot shipping. I'll tell you more about shipping in the US this week. But yeah, so if you have pre-ordered the nesting box, it should ship. It could ship by the end of this week, but I would suggest waiting until the end of next week, especially since the warehouse, I'm sure, will take July 4th as a holiday, and so they will not be shipping anything that day. So wait until the end of next week. This is still a little bit ahead of schedule. We anticipated this shipping in August, so we're ahead of schedule here for the Wingspan nesting box. Also slightly ahead of schedule is Expeditions. So Expeditions, Joe says it arrived and is actively shipping in Australia. So that's great news. So Australia covers Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. So it does not mean that if you have not received your shipping notification and you're in those regions that you should be worried yet. Please wait weeks until you're worried, because there are a lot of pre-orders. It will take weeks for them to ship these out. That's Australia. It's planning to arrive. It should arrive by the end of the week in Europe. And so you'll probably see maybe some shipping notices, or we'll see some shipping notices happen next week, but not this week for Europe. This is for Expeditions. Should arrive in Canada next week. And so you'll probably start to see shipping notifications the following week. And then there are lots of containers arriving at our fulfillment center in St. Louis this week. And so they're arriving. I think it'll take them a lot to process. They're going to focus on the nesting boxes. Shipping estimated to start on July 5th, and it will take at least 10 business days. And so that's 2 full weeks and probably more than that. We have a lot of copies of Expeditions to ship in the US. But this does mean that by the end of July, for sure, everyone should have gotten their copy of Expeditions. Not just really at this point, not just gotten your shipping notification, but you should get your shipment. The one exception to that is if you are in the second wave of the Ironclad edition, which you should be able to see on your email. Mostly the way to know this is that if you have ordered the Ironclad edition since, I think it was late April, in the US in particular, that is wave 2. So that means that that is kind of the second print run of Ironclad edition. That won't ship until late August, early September at best. That is a different wave than the first wave, which we did sell out of. A lot of news there. I'll go back and look at comments right now, but a lot of good shipping news right there. Carlos says that he's enjoyed the design diaries for Expeditions so far. Yeah, it's kind of fun to be writing these diaries at the same time that the game is essentially being shipped. It's been an interesting process to go through the pre-order process for this game instead of just launching it as we've done with other products. Julie says, what's your favorite continent to play in Viticulture World? We're working through them, but haven't played all of them yet. You know, it's actually been a little while since I played it myself, Julie. I don't know. I like the puzzles. I like all the different puzzles in them. For now, I'm still pretty bad at Viticulture World, so I like the easier realms, including even the starter realm, the Green Gully introductory realm. That one might still be my go-to because the game is fairly difficult. It's a great puzzle, I think, for people who like very difficult cooperative games. And so that's probably my top choice right now. But I do like the different puzzle the designers incorporated into the different realms or the different continents. So Amy's the one on vacation playing viticulture. She says she wishes she was in Italy. She's just with the family in the Poconos, enjoying a glass of wine with it though. That's perfect. Yeah. Any time that you can have some wine with viticulture counts as a good vacation moment. Good morning, Suzanne. Corey, I see here. People are excited about expeditions. I won't read all the comments, but I see people are excited about getting that. I do have a live play of Rolling Realms this week and starting this afternoon, in fact. So 3 o'clock Central Time today, tomorrow, and Friday, I'll be doing game 52 of Rolling Realms. If you want to join me, today's realms are going to be Euphoria, Rolling Realms, and My Little Size. So one promo realm in Rolling Realms, but the other two are included in the core game of Rolling Realms. And I have a fun Rolling Realms announcement to make next week in the e-newsletter, so stay tuned for that. Let's see, Kyle says, will pricing of expeditions be going back up to MSRP in the near future, or will it stay at pre-order price for a while? Kyle, that's a good question. I don't have a specific date for that. Usually when we start shipping is when I update that price. So, that's a good question. I think what I'll do, Kyle, is I will say on, especially since reviews are out there now, on July 5th, I will announce that we will keep that pricing for another week. So through July 12th. We'll say on July 12th, the prices are going to go up. They probably won't go up all the way to MSRP. We always like to have a slight discount on our web store if we can. But yeah, I'm going to make a note about that July 12th, the pre-order price, or it's essentially not even pre-order at that point. That's where we shift to order. So pre-order becomes an order. So yeah, Kyle, good question. I'm going to say July 12th, and I will announce that in the e-newsletter so people know about it next week in case they've been waiting to get a copy. Great question. I'm glad you asked about that. Julie says she wants to win each continent of Viticulture World at least once. That's an admirable goal. Tough to do, but it is possible. Certainly is possible. Has anyone watching this, has anyone completed and won every single continent in Viticulture World? If so, I'm incredibly impressed. Let me know in the comments here. Speaking of things that I'm playing recently, I just played Hegemony last night for the first time. That is a heavy game, and we had a great person, or Tim, who taught the game. Did a great job of steering us through the game. He and his wife had played before. It was him and his wife and me played a game night last night, and I kind of just launched into it and just went with the flow. And Tim did a great job of leading it. Also, recently I played a party game on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, played Ransom Notes. I also played First Rat, which is very much in the middle of those two games. First Rat is kind of a medium weight. I say kind of because it's maybe slightly on the lighter side of medium weight, but I would say medium weight game with one-way action tracks, 3 different one-way action tracks that I really enjoyed. And I played a game of Fiction, which I played a few times now. This was a few of these were at a half Christmas party that I attended this past weekend, at which I made a Wellington for the first time. I don't know, I've been watching Top Chef, and on Top Chef they had a Wellington episode, and I was like, that looks really good. I want to try to make that. A Wellington is when you wrap something, usually meat, in a puff pastry and you bake it. I used mushrooms. So I went to the farmer's market. I got 3 types of mushrooms and a melty cheese. I put it all in this giant puff pastry and baked it. And it actually was pretty good for my first Wellington. I enjoyed it. Trevor says, thanks. So Trevor's one of the people who got some of the components, the spare components from my cabinet of secrets. Thank you, Trevor. I'm glad you're enjoying it. He says, I immediately went out to get a tackle box to store them. Added a bunch to playtest one of my designs that had just been cubes. Yeah, that's always a nice moment when you can upgrade those cubes to something else. I actually did a playtest myself yesterday with some components from Stonemaier Games as well. Okay, Ray says he has a question for me and anyone listening right now. So fair game for anyone to answer in the comments. He says, have you or a loved one ever used a game specifically to take your mind off of something stressful in your life, and did it work? He said, this is Ray speaking, I took a big exam, one section of the CPA exams for accountants on Monday. And the night before, my wife wanted to play Splendor Duel with me during a study break. Afterwards, she told me that she wanted to help distract me from my worries, and it worked well by getting my mind so engaged. It's a really interesting question, Ray. Yeah, I love that question. I'm sure I have. I'm trying to think of a specific time that I've done that. But I can't off the top of my head think of a specific time that I have used a game to get my mind off of something stressful, but I love the idea of using games for that purpose. I've seen a lot of videos. I don't think I've done one a video about games that are comfortable, um, cozy games that are. I could see those types of games working perfectly for that moment, that stressful moment when you just want to feel cozy and comfortable. Maybe you don't want to think too much, but you want to think a little bit to get your mind off of whatever else your mind is on. Um, yeah, those comfortable, cozy games. I think Wingspan is one of those games for me and for Stonemaier games in general. But I love that question. Let me know if anyone else in the comments has ever used a game to get your mind off something else, and if you have a specific game that did that perfectly for you. Carol says, "How was Fiction?" She's seen people talk about it after Origins. I have a video about Fiction, Carol. I think it is a really clever word game. Uh, I am someone who doesn't often play word games, so it's essentially Wordle with a with a traitor, and I think that's a very clever twist on word games. I enjoy it because I enjoy being on the team because there's no pressure on me individually to come up with a clever word, to figure out the word, to come up with clever letters. I can chime in when I want to, but I can also just sit back and relax and watch the game be played. So it isn't a game that I will request to get to the table because I really just don't get excited about word games. My brain doesn't work well with them. But if someone pulls it out, I'm happy to join the team and just hang out and enjoy the party-like atmosphere that happens as you're trying to puzzle your way through Fiction. I do have one great moment with Fiction so far. I won't tell the story here, but the game leads to some fun moments where words you don't expect end up actually being the word. Um, yeah, it's a cleverly designed game, I think, especially for people who like word games. Nathan says that he played Wingspan with family while traveling for vacation. He says they're thinking of getting some expansions for their copy after getting some rules clarification and enjoying the game more. Yeah, it is always good to. Thank you, Nathan, for sharing it with them. It's always good to play. I would say any game really with someone who knows that game really well, because inevitably you'll probably find some rule that you've been playing wrong the whole time. Both Carol and Julie say that in Viticulture World they often want like one more turn or one more round to achieve victory, but fall just short of it. Like I said, it is a very difficult cooperative game. Good morning, George. He says, "I hope you're looking forward for Rolling Realms session today." Yeah, me too. Absolutely. And Corey says, "I haven't been on Board Game Arena in a while and found that Lost Cities, Spots, Boop, and Villagers have been added. I've played Boop. I haven't played Spots on there. I need to maybe check out Spots tonight. Tonight is our Board Game Arena night. We also might check out Applejack. Has anyone played Applejack? Would you recommend that? So I'm looking forward to that. I'll have to put a reminder to myself that Spots is on Board Game Arena now. I also own a copy of Spots. Spots. I absolutely think it's worth owning. It's a great game. Julie says we use games to get us through 2020. That's a great point. Yeah, Ray was asking about specific stressful moments, but yeah, 2020 was a stressful year, and so absolutely using games to get through that stressful time. Julie says it was an extremely stressful year, but we put many beautiful games on our table that felt like an escape when it didn't seem like we could escape that year. Well said, Julie. Amy mentioned Star Realms for that category. Stacy says we often play games to distract from grumps after work. Steve says he says I usually use the class at my CrossFit gym to get my mind off work. Does that count? But for board games, maybe Boon Lake. Yeah, Steve, I totally relate to that. My daily workout involves running up and down the stairs in my building, and it completely clears my head when I do that. It really helpful for me to do that every day, even though it's 10 minutes. Beverly is here. She says about teaching a game. I watched a YouTube video about teaching, and he said that for most people, doing is the best way to learn. Wingspan was my first hobby game, and I sure was grateful for the set. Can't remember the name that walks you through the first round. I wish all games did that. Yeah, so this is the Swift Start guide that we put in Wingspan that just kind of helps you take your first few turns in the game. That is how I love to teach games. I love to kind of guide people through their first turns rather than making them sit through a bunch of rules. And I think it's easier to retain that way after you've actually done the thing. It's actually one of the reasons in expeditions that the first turn for any player involves all three actions. The idea there is that you get to show a player If you're walking them through the turn, you can show them how each of those actions work, and then players know 90% of the game right away because they know how those 3 actions work automatically. So, um, yeah, yeah. Uh, Let me jump over to my topics real quick. Well, yeah, I'll do a few other quick topics. Been working on some prototypes recently. I won't say what they are, but I've been working on some prototypes. My video this past week about games that I've played exactly once, and I'm happy that I have played those games, but also happy to have just played them once. They're games that I don't see myself getting back to the table a lot, but I am grateful for the time I spent with them and the lessons I learned from them. So that was my video this past week. I'm going to a concert this weekend, so a few quick entertainment things. I'm going to a concert of a band that I really love called Me Like Bees. They're a fairly local band here in Missouri that I stumbled upon because the one of the musicians in the band is a big gamer, a guy named Jake, and he reached out to me a few years ago. And by reaching out to me, I also checked out his music and found that it's like my favorite type of music. And so I'm really excited. I haven't been to a concert since the pandemic. And so this will be my first concert on Friday this weekend in St. Louis. If anyone's watching this and you happen to be going to this concert, let me know because I'd love to say hi to you there. That's the Me Like Bees concert here in St. Louis this weekend. Also, for those following along with my cat Biddy, who isn't in the room right now, but last week was a very difficult week for Biddy. I don't think I even mentioned it on the podcast, but last week, right after the live cast, I took Biddy to the vet, knowing that something was really wrong with Biddy. He had not been eating much. He had not been food had not been making its way through his digestive system. He was throwing up a lot, fairly violent throw ups. And so I took him to the vet, and actually last week was when I took him to the ultrasound. I took him to get an ultrasound. I took him to the vet the week before. I took him to get an ultrasound, and I was kind of mentally and emotionally not fully prepared, but bracing myself for the diagnosis that this was the end for Biddy. Biddy's 16 years old. I thought that might be it. But there was some good news with that. The good news is that even though it does look like Biddy has lymphoma of his intestines, and he does have, or had, kind of still has, a big mass growing between his small and large intestines. That was what the blockage was. And Biddy is not eligible for surgery. That there was a good chance that Biddy might respond well to steroids and chemo, both of which are available in the form of pills for cats. And so over the last week, the good news, so went from thinking that this could be the last day that I had with Biddy to knowing that I had an opportunity to make Biddy happier and more comfortable for the time that he had left. And so we acted pretty quickly. And over the last week, Biddy has been taking those pills and he's responded really well to them. He's acting more like his old self. He's motivated to eat again. He's excited to eat. He is using the bathroom again. He hasn't thrown up at all. And it's just been really, really encouraging. And so just wanted to share that. I'm sure those of you who follow me on Instagram can see the post about Biddy, but I've been really encouraged by the progress that he's made over the last week. And overall, the goal is to make him as comfortable and happy as possible. And if the moment comes where that's no longer possible, I know that there is that final step for an old cat, old pet of any type. But for now, I'm encouraged that I get some more time with my my little boy. To some less emotional topics. Let's see here. Carol says that she can resonate with the idea of playing games to distract and escape. She says her son recently had surgery. I'm so sorry, Carol. And she said she was playing Ark Nova online with friends while playing Coffee Roaster in the waiting room, then kept playing games through the evening. I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Carol. I hope your son is okay. And I love that games were there as an outlet for you to distract yourself a little bit. Melissa says Obsession, Tapestry, and Kanban are some of her comfort games, but not quite sure why they are her comfort games. Yeah, I love that. The comfort and coziness can mean different things to different people. Chad just popped in to say hi. Ian says he's a teacher and really got into modern board gaming big time during the COVID years. Board gaming, especially solo gaming, helped his mental health a lot. Playing games was a nice release from the real world and allowed him to de-stress. I'm sure that was it still is and was a very trying time for teachers, Ian, and I'm glad you had that outlet to discover and explore. Corlin says, how many submissions did you get for the Wingspan custom art did we receive? Where are we at in the process of getting those cards? So they're in production now, Corland. If you look at our website, you can sign up for a notification about it. It's under Wingspan and then accessories is where we have a notification about that. We got around 300 submissions, and some of them were duplicates. And we gave anyone who sent in a duplicate the opportunity to submit a different bird so that we wouldn't have to make a choice between two different illustrations. Some people responded to that, some people didn't respond to that. And so we ended up with, I believe it was 355, maybe 356 birds. So, and they actually ended up in a pretty equal distribution relative to the number of cards in the core set and each of the three expansions. So it's either 355 or 356. It's on our website. But yeah, we're in production right now, and I think we're looking at by the holiday season, I think is when we'll be ready to release those. I'm excited about that. Chad says, curious if you think that base Clank would be a more fun two-player experience if the map were smaller. Interesting question. There are some limited things on Clank. The artifacts, the treasures are a little bit limited on the Clank board. I enjoy it two-player as it is, though, because there's ample stuff to get down there. I don't necessarily know that limiting the size or the space would add to the experience. I mean, you could try it, Chad, but I personally enjoy Clank at all player counts without any form of scaling. I'm trying to think if there is any scaling at all in Clank, but I can't recall there being anything that I can think of. Julie mentions Obsession as well. I love the love for Obsession. I've still only played once because I put Obsession in the longer game category. I've seen games last up to 5 hours, between 3 and 5 hours. So, Chad says, has he missed the question of the day? Do I have a question of the day today? I don't know if I do. I have a lot of topics, but I don't know if I have a specific question of the day. Let me see if I can come up with one. I meant to write one here. So I don't know exactly if I have one. I know I'm planning to probably do a blog post tomorrow about the topic that we talked about last week about making products that people request and deciding what to do with that. We discussed that last week. I also want to do a blog post in the near future about the daily routines of creative people who are actively creating stuff. I saw a fun graphic about that recently. Don't know if there's really a question that goes hand in hand with that. I'm going to ask on the post, what are people's daily routines, just to see, but it doesn't work well as a question here for a live cast. It works better if you can kind of chart it out in numbers. Upcoming videos that I want to do. So here's one. It's about gaming. One video that I want to do at some point are my favorite games that feature endowed progress at the beginning of the game. So this is the idea that a game gives you some stuff to start out with that makes you feel like you've already accomplished something, even though you haven't done anything in the game. An example of this, if you're familiar with it, is the game Role Player. Well, Role Player at the very beginning of the game has you roll a bunch of dice and put them on your mat. You start out with a bunch of dice already set in your mat. So it feels like you've already started to build your character before you really do that much at all. And I guess there is a decision point in Role Player as to where you place those dice. Wingspan is also an example of this. Wingspan gives you some starting stuff. It doesn't start you out with no food and no cards. It starts you out with some cards, some food, your choice between a total of 10 things, 5 cards and 5 food for 5 total of your selection. And that feels good. Terraforming Mars, one of the most beloved expansions in Terraforming Mars, is the one that starts you out with a lot of stuff and a special ability. That feels really good. So I'm looking for games that start you off with a special boost that makes you feel like you've already made progress in the game. So if you have a favorite game that does that, let me know in the comments here. I'm working on a video in that, and it's a tough thing to look up. I don't think there is a category of this on Board Game Geek. Luke says that he became obsessed with designing games in 2020, and that helped him get through the pandemic. That's awesome, Luke. Yeah, that was kind of why I created Rolling Realms, or how I created Rolling Realms. I wanted something to work on, and I wanted something to work on that I could actively play with other people who were looking to connect with each other during a time where personal connections were pretty difficult because we were all isolated. Beverly says she likes the name Me Like Bees because she's a beekeeper. I don't even really know the origin of the name, Beverly. I don't know if it has all that much to do with bees, but I love that you're a beekeeper. That's awesome. Uh, William says, so this is the question about using games as a way to get over stress. William says, during the weekend of my grandma's funeral, his dad, his brother, and him played a game he designed called Kingdom Come. It's not a comfy game, but it was a comforting distraction and a bonding moment that we all needed. My dad was optimistic and hopeful for the future, even though his mom recently and unexpectedly passed. Thank you for sharing that, William. I'm sure that's a tough memory to dredge up, but I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I really do. People are responding to the Biddy chat. I appreciate the positive vibes for Biddy, and really this week has been really good to see Biddy acting more like his old self. Still a lighter version of his old self. He lost a lot of weight during this time, and he's still gaining it back. And I don't want to overload his system as he adjusts to these pills. But yeah. Um, Patrick says, I said the phrase in the corset, but apparently the subtitles of the video said in the corset, as in the garment, the corset. That's great. Carol says that her son, who went through surgery recently, her son is doing well. Last week was a rough week, but he's back to his sassy self and asking to play board games with me again. Sounds a little bit like Biddy, Carol, at least the sassy part of it. I'm glad to hear that. Vera says, are you planning to go to Gen Con, and is there anything you're particularly looking forward to? I won't personally be there, but Stonemaier Games will have a robust presence there through my convention manager, Dave, my coworker. Alex will be there. I think Susanna will be there. And Meeple Source will be there with co-hosting the booth with us. So Gen Con isn't really my style of convention. It's more of an exhibition rather than a convention where you go and just play games. You can do that, but you kind of have to work at it if you want to play games at Gen Con. So I'm not going, Vera. I hope you are excited about it and that you have fun in the way that you want to have fun there. And I hope you stop by the Stonemaier Games booth while you're there. Okay, Tim points out there is a little bit of scaling in Clank that I've forgotten about. The start of the dragon attack. So where the dragon starts on the dragon attack track is slightly different based on player count. You're totally right. And that's a great form of scaling. Like very easy to choose that, to place that at the beginning of the game. It doesn't require you to even look at the rulebook to figure out how it scales by player count. Julia says that her dog had lymphoma and he used both of those pills and he too responded really well. I'm glad to hear that, Julia, about your dog, and encouraged for my little boy, Biddy. Julie says, my caution to you is to be sure not to go too far with them. I went too far and used the pills too long and my dog ended up perforating. The vet said that once there are more cancer cells than normal cells, the pills kill the cancer cells, which can make a hole, which I told was very painful, and I definitely don't want to cause pain to Biddy. So there will come a point where even on the pills, he starts to go downhill again. I just don't want you to suffer what I still do, always regretting that I held on a tad too long and caused him pain. Good luck. Enjoy your time with him while it lasted. Also, her dog lasted several years on the pills before that happened. That's amazing. Yeah, I've been kind of looking at, I've been told 6 to 12 months. So if I get 6 months, even 6 months, I think would be incredible as long as Biddy is pain free. The tough thing with Biddy is he's had so many trials and tribulations over the years. I won't even go through and name them, but it's a lot, that he hides pain really well. The only way I knew something was really happening was that Biddy's main motivation in life is to get more food, and he stopped caring about food. So I have that as a signal now, but other than that, Biddy hides pain so well that it's tough to see. It will be tough to see if he is hiding it. But that is a great note. I appreciate you sharing that, and I will keep an eye on that as much as I can. Kevin says, if you haven't already, Deep Work by Cal Newport is a great book and would be a good research on how creatives create and how to navigate that in a world with constant distractions. I like that recommendation. Deep Work. Thank you. Deep Work. Thank you for that, Kevin. I appreciate that. Chad says that Catan gives. Oh yeah, Catan is a great example of endowed progress. I love that. I'll make a note about that right now. Catan. Can't believe I didn't think of that one, but I'm glad you did. So talking about games that give you endowed progress, so the sense of progress before you even start the game. Kevin gives you some options for starting resources. Yes, you're absolutely right. One of my favorite games to talk about. Solkin. Vera mentioned Lorenzo Il Magnifico. That actually just came up on a chat yesterday. I've been doing these recordings with Stoneware ambassadors about some of their favorite games, and we talked about dice placement games yesterday with Jeff. So I'll add that to the list. Thank you, Vera, for that one. By the way, I've been having a blast with these videos. I know, I think only 1 or 2 of them are live so far. Maybe only 1. But I've been loving them. So they're basically, I reached out to Stonemeyer ambassadors and I said, hey, if there's any topic that I've covered in the past or any topic that you want me to cover for my like top 10 videos that you are passionate about, I would be happy to have you join me for a conversation and we'll each do a top 5 of that topic. And I've recorded, I think, around 6 of them at this point. Only 1 has gone live. There will be another one this weekend. But I've really loved this conversations. It's been a nice way to do it, to come up with these lists and to hear someone else's perspective. And so I hope that's been fun for you all who follow the YouTube channel, that it isn't just me talking, that you get to hear someone else who's probably more interesting than me anyway, talk about what they think about games. I really enjoyed it. Luke says that Ares Expeditions also starts with asymmetrical stuff. Absolutely. And I should clarify, it doesn't always have to be asymmetrical. It can be the same thing. In fact, that comes to mind with Clans of Caledonia, and I gotta spell it right, Caledonia and the Isle of Cats. Both of them start out with a mound of stuff that you can spend, of currency that you can spend, so you feel like you have a lot of stuff right away at the beginning of the game. I wonder if I should count that as endowed progress. It's very close to being in that category, but you haven't actually made anything yet. So I don't know if I should include, I'll leave a note to myself about that. Should starting resources count? So I would say, I'll say this. I would say that they count in a game where part of the game, the point of the game is to gather resources. But if resources come to you automatically as they do in Isle of Cats, although you are gathering them at sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. That's a fine line. Like, do starting resources count as endowed progress? They do give you a head start for sure, but it is a little different than the thing that you're building, whatever you're building towards, as is the case in role player. Like the entire game is gaining those dice and placing those dice, and you get to start out with a bunch of them already placed and built for you. Julie says Agricola is an unusual one for your question because you start with a lot of cards. You feel like you have choices for what to do and have to decide which to pursue. The challenge is that you have no physical resources aside from a little bit of food, so it may not be endowed progress, but is a lot to start with. I would say that fits well into this question that I'm asking, that you do start out with a lot of it. None of those cards start in play exactly, so it may not count, but it does feel like you have a lot to work with, as you said here, Julie. Corey says, if you select correctly in Catan, you can build a road on your first turn. It feels good to be the first to get something on the board. And really in Catan, you start with stuff on the board. Like during setup, you start with those decisions of where to place your settlement and your trading house, whatever they call it, and some roads. Neeks says, a group of us has been focused on building the board game design community in Richmond, Virginia. That's where I'm from. I love to hear that. We had a great turnout next week. Do you have any design activities that you recommend? So some of the, I think, especially if you have a lot of new designers, Neeks, I think a great thing to do is to have a little design challenge where you design an expansion for a game, or you reskin a game. You design an existing game and you change it into something else. Not just a straight reskin, but apply some new elements to that game. I think that's a great starting point for new designers. Also, if you want to use Rolling Realms for it, Rolling Realms I think is a great design opportunity because you can design a realm, a very simple, streamlined realm based on an existing game. So you can take a game that you love and say, okay, how can I translate this into Rolling Realms? What are my favorite elements of this game, and how can I distill them down into a single realm with limited space for rules? And so, Neeks, if you don't have a copy of Rolling Realms and you want to use that for a design challenge for this group or design inspiration for this group, let me know. I'll send you a copy for you to use for that, and you can let me know how it goes. Vera says that Gaia Project starts with a lot of resources as well. Yeah, I'll add Gaia Project and Terra Mystica for sure. Gaia Project, Terra Mystica. Great answers to this question. Vera says that she will stop by the booth at Gen Con. She says she got to meet Elizabeth Hargrave at the Stonemaier booth pre-pandemic, and she signed her Wingspan box. I don't know if I don't think Elizabeth will be there this year, but I'm glad you got to meet her that year. She's a wonderful woman to hang out with. And I'm trying to think if any designers will be there this year specifically. I guess I'm the designer of Expeditions, and I won't be there. But offhand, I can't think of any Stonemaier related designers who will be there this year. But they might be, and I just don't know about it. Chet says, your question about games that give you something at the beginning reminds me of a study that was done with sandwich punch cards. They gave people a non-punch punch card with 4 slots for a free sandwich, and other people with 5 slots for a free sandwich with 1 slot already punched. It was surprising how many people finished the 5 punch card and not the non-punch card. I love this example, Chad. I think this might be something that was mentioned on the Ludology podcast. I'm going to leave a note about this on the on my little. I use Trello for note taking. That's what I'm taking notes in right now. Luke says there's a YouTube series where the host goes through the daily routine of famous creatives. It's pretty good. What do you remember the name of the series, Luke? I love hearing about that. Tim says, with regards to the vision-friendly card orders, does that affect how many of the fan art cards that you will print? Tim, we're making a lot of the fan art cards. We anticipate a lot of demand for them. I am a little concerned now, for sure, given the lack of demand for the vision-friendly cards. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that there is a significant amount of demand for them. So we'll find out in a few months when we start selling them. I think they're really cool. I think the creativity on display, we're talking about creativity today, the creativity on display on the fan art cards is incredible. The question is, will people want to get these cards when they already have Wingspan cards? Maybe not. But, and either way, like no matter how many are bought, our pledge to charity, to the bird-related charities, is that we're giving $1 to those charities for every copy we make. So it's separate from how many we sell. So it doesn't even use charity as a motivation to sell copies. I hope people will support it. I hope people will enjoy it, really. Not just support it, but I hope it adds joy to your tabletop. And really, that's the goal. And these cards are so joyful. The art on them is amazing. I look forward to sharing it with you. You've probably already seen some of it in the Wingspan Facebook group. So I hope it was worth it. We kind of went all in on these cards. We'll see if it works out. We always take that risk. Julie says that Fantastic Factories gives you 4 blueprint cards and some resource tokens. You can typically do something with that on your first turn to get going. That's a great example, Julie. I actually brought that to my game night last night, or to a game night last night. Ended up playing Hegemony instead, but was kind of in the mood for Fantastic Factories. Matt says Resurgence lets you draft your resources at the beginning of the game, which is a really interesting way to generate your starting resources. Resurgence, I'm not familiar with that one, but I will add it to the list. Thank you, Matt, for that recommendation. Patrick says, when you create games, do you have a way of making sure that the game has good replay value? I actually have a recent video about replayability. Patrick, if you want to see a long list of how we do make games replayability and how I do think about that constantly. I know varying setup can be one way, but that doesn't work for every game. Randomizing events, perhaps with the deck of cards, is another, again, but that only works for certain types of games. Patrick says that the subtitle for I Love Cats is I Love Cats. So Patrick, that's a big topic. I'd recommend checking out the video because I do talk about it quite in detail of the many different ways that I think about replayability in terms of game design, and how I also think about it in terms of not adding too much time to set up. I think there's sometimes some games where they go so over the top in set up replayability elements that it becomes almost cumbersome to get the game to the table, making it in a way less replayable because it's less likely to get to the table. So I always try to balance those two elements when I'm talking about replayability in terms of setup. How much setup do you ask players to do versus the replayability that they get? In fact, it's something that's come up recently with Expeditions. Some of the feedback I've gotten for Expeditions is, hey, why aren't there other setups for the board? I've tested other setups for the board, and I found that they really don't add replayability to the game because the tiles are already randomized and where they're put out. Changing the layout of the board doesn't change the feeling of the game really at all. And so I had no plans to change the setup for the board. I think that there's already a lot of replayability in terms of the random placement of the tiles, not the exact configuration. And there really aren't many configurations that include all 20 tiles in a south, central, north configuration and still showcase five face-up cards on the board. Not that five face-up cards necessarily need to be face-up on the board. You probably could have fewer, but there aren't many configurations that work for that purpose. Chad says that he recently started drinking Earl Grey tea. Wow, I've been missing out. Do you have a favorite tea? I must have been on that much of a tea drinker, Chad. I do have a little morning coffee here, my little cup. But it's very rare that I think of tea as something to drink. Carol says that Architects of the West Kingdom starts you with resources. Arc Nova starts you with money and cards. And Endless Winter. Great examples there. Let me make a note about those. Arc Nova, absolutely. I also have Earth on my list and A Feast for Odin and Mosaic. In fact, Mosaic is one of the games that made me think of this in particular because Mosaic not only lets you start with cards, but it also lets you play those cards right away if you want to. You can just have them in play from the start of the game, the tech cards. Let's see. Julie says, another unusual example for your question. My Little Everdell gives options to handicap the game for younger players through a few options. You can start with 1 or 2 green production cards, and I think there's an option for starting with some resources too if you need to handicap it even more. It's been helpful in making the game more competitive when playing with our 6-year-old. This is Julie speaking. He feels good when he beats us or comes close. So there is endowed progress for some players for a specific purpose. That is really interesting, Julie. I'm going to quote you here, I think, if you don't mind, in the video, because I don't want to forget about that. And I have not played My Little Everdell, so. And I'll quote Chad for his comment about the punch cards as well. That's a great example. Let me see what else I was going to cover today before I focus on questions and comments for the rest of the chat. I did mention that Fantasies and Futures is on Tabletopia now. I gave some shipping updates about the nesting box and expeditions. I think I gave those around 5 minutes into the video if you want to go back and check those out. I signed a bunch of cards. So I think many of you know that we have signed cards for some of our games, the games that I've designed, on our web store. And every now and then I have to go in and sign more cards. Dave drops off a bunch of cards. So I watched a few episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Night Court while signing a bunch of cards. I say this as if it's a burden. I should be flattered. I'm honored that people want cards signed by me. But it's a lot to do. My arm literally goes numb when I'm doing that. I signed probably around 700 cards over the course of an hour and a half the other day doing that. So that was a fun little task for me. And it's fun to just relax and have the TV on in the background while I do that. I also sent out games to some conventions that have play and win sections at their conventions over the next few months. I took care of that the other day. And the blogs that I wrote recently were about logistics and retail. That was that video that I filmed with Alex and posted on Monday. And last Thursday was a guest post from Fulfillrite about eco-friendly fulfillment options. And I guess just a fun thing. I did play disc golf this weekend as usual. And shows that I'm watching right now are Top Chef, ready for the finale. We're going to watch the finale tomorrow. Silo, the other two. We saw the movie The Flash and really enjoyed it, actually. I know it's kind of tanking in theaters right now, but we had a lot of fun with it. And watching Marvel's Secret Invasion. Probably watch the second episode later today. Yeah, that's what we're watching right now. In fact, Silo, it's a great time to get on Silo if you haven't watched Silo yet, because it is its first season finale is coming up, I think, on Friday, maybe. That's on Apple TV. Yeah, I'm making notes about any topics that I've covered today for the video title, talking about endowed progress and stress. All right. Some comments about tea here. Julie says, I think the fan art cards in Wingspan could be an interesting set just to play with on their own. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great option. In fact, I'm anticipating that most people will keep those cards as a separate set so they can play with You don't have to. The card backs are the same. The cards look the same, but you can separate them if you want and have kind of a little bit of a wackier game of Wingspan in terms of aesthetics. Uh, Mechanics are the same as usual. Carol says that Resurgence is a bag building worker placement Euro by Stan Kordonsky. I think Carol may have mentioned that before. The same designer as Endless Winter and Rurik, which I meant to play with Carol at Geekway. It didn't work out. Carol will still have to get in that game of Rurik at some point in the future. Matt also says that Resurgence is so good. Let me look it up. Let me see if I've actually seen this and not played it. Resurgence bag building. Okay, yes, I do recognize this box, and I do remember people talking about it. Okay, I need to play this. 7.9 on Board Game Geek. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that recommendation. I'll have to check that out. Mike says, Tekenhu has starting cards you draft for starting resources that also make you choose your starting player order and also a tiebreaker card. I haven't played that one yet, Mike, but I need to try that one. Tom says it's been a few weeks since he's listened in. He's noticed the Scythe Legendary Box is back in the European store. Would it still work even if I don't have Invaders from Afar? Yeah, unlike the Nesting Box, the Scythe Legendary Box is mostly just a big empty box that holds all Scythe stuff. It does have a few, or it should have a few cardboard boxes on the inside. I did get a report the other day that someone's copy was missing those things. I don't think we stopped including those things in the box, as far as I can recall. I think it was just probably a one-off mistake. But yes, it does work with any combination of Scythe stuff because partially the organization of it is still up to you. You can even put the full, if you eventually get Invaders from Afar, you can put the full box inside the Legendary Box if you want. But yeah, it works for any combination of Scythe stuff. That said, if you can already fit all the Scythe stuff that you have in the Scythe box, then you don't necessarily need the Legendary Box. It's for primarily if you have all Scythe stuff and you want to fit it in one place. Kevin says he'll be fortunate enough to go to Dice Tower East next week. He's working for Arcane Wonders. And he says, I hope to be able to try Expeditions while I'm there. I'm hoping that I did send a copy to Tom. I think they posted a review in the last week or so. So hopefully they'll bring that copy along to have it at Dice Tower East. Also, I've gotten a few people asking me, getting a few emails, I think, from the media asking me if they can hang out at Dice Tower East with me. I won't be there. I think the confusion is that Meeple Source will be there with our products, but Stonemaier Games doesn't have a presence other than Meeple Source at Dice Tower East. So I really appreciate Meeple Source being there and hosting our products there, but Stonemaier Games won't actually be at Dice Tower East. Curtis says, given the slow orders for vision-friendly cards, have you considered for more specialized products to more exclusively use a pre-order model to more closely match actual demand? Not necessarily pre-order, sometimes, Curtis, maybe, but I think more likely what I would do in the future is treat it as a teaser product. So we do three categories of products. We have teasers where we tease it well in advance, like what we did with the Nesting Box to get people to sign up for it so we can see how many people actually sign up for it, versus pre-order, which is when we have kind of barely started production and it's still not too late for us to change the production quantity, but it is a few months before we would deliver the product. And then there is the launch products that we do, which is we've already made the products, we're ready to ship it very soon. Here it is. You can buy it now and get it shipped to you within a few weeks. So either using the pre-order or the teaser model for products like that, I think is probably a good call to use in the future. And especially since there was no secrecy around the vision-friendly cards, we could have talked about that. We could have got more signups for that earlier to determine how many to actually print. Curtis also mentions Teotihuacan as a game with variable starting resources. Every game I think in that T series must have them. Ivan says, I think a great replayability is having multiple strategies in terms of final scoring, so multiple paths to victory. That's definitely one of the categories I mentioned in the video. Also, they have to be balanced because if one strategy is better, then players will compete for that and the game becomes stale and uninteresting. Thankfully, some of our games always have, or often have at least, multiple ways of scoring in all of our games. Thank you for sharing that, Ivan. Steven says, Star Realms has a small card expansion called Gambit, where each player gets 2 random cards that sit in front of them and can be cashed in at any point to gain an immediate boost. Some of them are often cashed in on turn 1, like a bug attack or a big defense boost. Gambit, yeah, that's very specific within the Star Realms world. I need to try that one actually. That sounds a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to actually the Star Realms campaign version to play that with Megan at some point in the future. Jonathan says that he enjoys Silo as well. Curtis says, have you attended any other cons other than Geekway that are more gaming focused? I haven't. I need to. I need to at some point because that is the type of gaming convention that I enjoy. Most of them involve a bit of travel, and so I maybe need to have that coincide with another trip. But it's good to hear that that's the style of convention that Dice Tower does, the Dice Tower hosts. So I need to attend one of those Dice Tower East or West conventions at some point in the future and just hang out and play games for a few days. That is exactly the style of convention that I really enjoy. Ferris says, thank you for being conscientious about sustainable materials. Are there other publishers you collaborate with to influence your supply chain regarding their carbon footprint? Thank you for asking about that, Vera. I am part of a tabletop gaming group. It's called like the Green Gamers Group, I believe, on Facebook, where we share kind of what we're working on with other publishers in that group to see what we can do better. It's basically, it isn't the type of group where we say you should be doing this or you need to do that. It's rather saying, hey, like we're thinking about this or we're trying this. Has anyone else tried this? Do you have any recommendations? So we're learning from each other actively based on what we're thinking about and what we're trying. I think that group is awesome. And it might even be open to anybody who's passionate about that topic. I don't know if it's just limited to designers and publishers. So feel free to check that out. I think, let me see if I can find the exact, well, I don't want to mess up. Green, yeah, I think I follow it on my personal account, not my Stillmeyer account. So I don't want to drop the Livecast by going to look for it. But it has green in the name for sure. And maybe publishers as well. Carol says she can teach me Resurgence and Rurik. Thank you, Carol. I would love that. Absolutely. Julie points to the rulebook about My Little Everdell. Thank you, Julie, for sharing that. Chad says he enjoyed my design diary evolution about expeditions. I still have one more to go. I've done 2019, 2020, 2021, and I have one more to do for 2022 when I have a little bit of spare time. May not happen today, but we'll see. And I will absolutely keep doing that for future days, for future games, absolutely. Brandon says, you've mentioned Trick Takers a couple times on videos, and I'm wondering if you have any tips for how to get a copy because I can't seem to find it. Brandon, I'd recommend, so there was a Kickstarter very recently. They might be actively selling it on a pledge manager for that Kickstarter. But if you look at the Portland Games Collective, I think is the name of the company. Look for Portland Games Collective. They have a lot of trick-taking games that you can often order from their store and ship anywhere. They probably have that game. Also, Brandon, one of the weird things about the Kickstarter is they actually, and I think they may have offered 2 versions of the game and even shipped 2 versions of the game to some people. I might actually, so like backers of the game, including maybe myself, might have a travel version of Trick Takers and a full version of it. And I don't really need 2 versions of it. So I will check to see if that's true in my copy, but you could talk to other backers of that campaign and see if they ended up with 2 copies of the game somehow. Corey says there's a big difference between what people want and what they can buy. There's a meme artist that says you should make a print of that. Yeah, that is always a tough challenge with these teaser products. What people say they're interested in, what they're willing to buy, and that was what my early surveys even said for the vision friendly cards. But there's a big gap between what someone says they'll buy and what they actually buy when it comes time to spend money. Steven says that Paolo Mori, designer of Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest, has a great designer's diary on Board Game Geek about Archaeo Society. Would be interesting if he wrote one for Libertalia. So Paolo did offer some thoughts that I incorporated into the design diary post for Libertalia. He's always welcome to write one. I would love for him to write one. I never want to put that pressure on him to do so, but I would. Can you link to that, Stephen? Because I'd love to check that out if that's available still. Frank, thank you, Frank. Frank linked to the Green Board Games group. That is the group where we talk about how to make our games greener. Corey says he recommends the Charleston CharCon July 14th through 16th. Plenty of other things around here to schedule for a trip. Just jump on 64 and go east. I've been to, Charleston. I had a long distance relationship for a while with a woman in Charleston, and I'm well versed with that trip, Corey. That specific weekend, I do have something going on, but in the future, I may not have stuff going on that specific weekend. So I would love to come and play games for a few days at CharCon. Thank you for the invitation. Nathan says, I would guess more people buy the fan art cards. I hope so. I hope a lot more, actually, because we're making a lot more fan art cards than the vision friendly, because there is a way to bling. They are a way to bling out their game. I know already other games already have art promos that are pretty popular. Corey says that Travis with Queen Games is the one who runs Charcon. That's awesome. Okay, I got to have dinner with Travis when he was passing through town a few months ago. Kevin says the board game industry, for the most part, seems to be very unique in the sense that companies are very friendly with each other. Yeah, we learn so much from each other in this industry. They all root for the success of each other. Kind of the rising tide raises all ships mentality. Other industries seem much more cutthroat. Do you have any insights or commentary on this? It's more, I mean, it's something that I mention from time to time. It's just kind of neat that it happens, that we look to raise up each other. And I think part of it is that, like, when a customer goes to a game store, a customer might have a certain amount of money that they're going to spend on a game, and there is kind of competition essentially on the shelves there. Like, we're all trying to make our games look awesome. We're all trying to make our games awesome so that that customer will choose our game. But just because that customer chooses, say, Wingspan this time, doesn't mean that they won't choose the Isle of Cats next time. And in fact, them, by choosing Wingspan, might have them go down a rabbit hole of games that are like Wingspan, that might have other amazing creatures in them, like the Isle of Cats. I mentioned this because Frank is here today. So by buying one game, it might actually really open the door for them to explore other games as well. And in that way, I think that's why many game publishers view each other not as competitors, but as peers and as people that we can lift each other up to do better and to better serve all of the customers in the industry. In the end, we're seeking to serve our specific customers. But I think it's a neat space where there isn't, unlike like Microsoft, where Microsoft wants you to buy the Xbox and only buy Xbox games. Like Microsoft is not served by a customer buying a PlayStation and then buying PlayStation games. Microsoft kind of loses out on that. With the gaming space, there isn't like a console in that way, where the console is our tabletop and any game can go on a tabletop. So I don't know. I think I take it for granted sometimes, but I am really, really grateful that that's the way things are in the gaming industry. And I hope it continues to be that way. A few more comments here, and then I need to run. Let's see. Patrick says, well, I like the idea of anything that degrades in garbage, unlike plastic, which is going to be around for hundreds of years. Part of me really likes the idea of a future civilization finding board game pieces and wondering what the game might have been like. I like the idea of that, but I also don't like the idea that I would produce plastic that will be around for hundreds of years. Chet says, any belly laughs over the weekend? Might have been hard with Biddy's health, but I always enjoy remembering good laughs. There always is with Megan, but we went to see The Flash, I mentioned a few minutes ago, and The Flash is genuinely funny. There is multiple moments in Flash where we were laughing out loud and unable to stop laughing for at least a few seconds. Really, really funny moments in the movie The Flash. I think it has some of the best levity of any DC Comics movie, many of which lean into like gritty and dark themes. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't, but The Flash has a really nice sense of levity to it, balanced with some good character choices as well. One last comment from Micah here about console spaces. Console space is weird. Like I used the Xbox example a second ago. The hardware is usually at a loss and software games at a profit, but they like to lock things as exclusives to get the hardware sales. Yeah, that's a good comparison there, Mike, or good insights. All right, I'm going to take off and have some lunch today, but thank you all for joining me for this chat. I love your insights. I love your questions and your comments, and I will put this up on YouTube to continue the conversation if you have anything to add there. And I will be back next week for a fun announcement about Rolling Realms and our monthly e-newsletter. I'll see you then. Bye.